Good morning, everyone. Until I bought this deck of tarot cards around 1970, I had never heard of Ordo Templi Orientis, but I had seen this beautiful lamen on one of the documents that I had with my membership in the Rosicrucian Order Amorc. I had no idea they sort of pirated that image for one of their publications. But anyway, Ordo Templi Orientis sounded really cool. And this box of tarot cards, which attracted me at the bookstore because it had this beautiful rose cross on the back, and I was active in the Rosicrucian Order, I thought, wow, that's got to be something I should be interested in. But anyway, that started my whole strange career. My whole life sort of changed when I bought that deck. And I had no idea that in the future I would eventually be writing the book Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot. But that's the way it is. We're going to finish it today. The only thing that will be left after today's reading is the glossary. And I don't think that the glossary would be very dynamic reading for something like this. Tomorrow, I'm going to start another book, another one of my books. And it's, to tell you the truth, it's the best book I ever wrote that nobody's read. I know a few of you have read it. Thank you very much. And those of you who have read it seem to have enjoyed it very much. I certainly enjoyed writing it. And it's called The Book of Ordinary Oracles. It is still available on Amazon. And I would order it from Amazon. You can see people trying to get in private sales exorbitant fees for this little book, but it's a normal price book on Amazon. So when you shop for it, which I hope you will, don't fall for an exorbitant asking price for it. Just get the regular asking price. And of course, it's on Kindle, but the hard copy is really the one to get. It's a fun book, and it's very timely and useful, especially at this time of year when you're thinking about doing an oracle for the new year, or would just like to figure out how to use anything around the house as a bona fide spiritual oracle. Weiser subtitled this book, and I didn't object, but they subtitled it, Use Pocket Change, Popsicle Sticks, a TV Remote, This Book and More to Predict the Future and Answer Your Questions. The book itself is an oracle. See this? See that along the side? Those are little thumbnail oracles for every page so that you can do bibliomancy. What did I choose? It says it's a toss-up. That's a little magic 8-ball. Well, anyway, it should be a lot of fun, especially at this holiday season. So I hope you'll tune in and ask your divinatory, tarot, I Ching friends to also tune in. But today we're going to finish up talking about the small cards of the Thoth Tarot, and these are Crowley's suggestions for divinatory meanings for each of the cards. We're on the swords this morning. The Ace of Swords. It symbolizes invoked as contrasted with natural force. So remember, the Ace of Wands represented a natural force. But the Ace of Swords is invoked force. For it is the invocation of the sword. Raised upwards, it invokes the divine crown of spiritual brightness, but reversed, it's the invocation of demonic force and becomes a fearfully evil symbol. It represents, therefore, very great power for good or evil, but invoked. And it also represents whirling force and the strength through trouble. It is the affirmation of justice, holding divine authority, and it may become the sword of wrath, punishment, and affliction. Wow. Now the court cards. The Knight of Swords. He is active, clever, subtle, fierce, delicate, courageous, skillful, but inclined to domineer. Also to overvalue small things, unless well dignified. If ill dignified, deceitful, tyrannical, and crafty. Now I'm just going to pause for a moment and remind us why these cards are ordered the way they are. At least it is my belief that the order of the tarot deck would represent a completely ordered universe. The universe actually the way it is. So if if your tarot deck represented existence and being, when it's properly ordered, it represents how existence is right now. It's a perfectly ordered universe. Because the universe is operating perfectly right now. Okay? If it doesn't appear that it's operating perfectly right now, it's because we're screwed up. It's our fundamental defects in our powers of perception that misread reality to be the screwed up situation that we have. It's not the universe's fault, it's our fault. Or at least it's our defective powers of perception's fault. So, usually when you buy a tarot deck, they're ordered in a very, very specific way. And I believe the perfectly, Kabbalistically perfect order of a tarot deck should be start with the trumps, the greater arcana, 0 through 21. Then it would be the ace, then the lesser arcana would be split up into the 4 suits, wands, cups, swords, and discs. And each of those would be the ace, then the knight, queen, prince, princess. So the ace, and then the court cards. And then the small cards 2 through 10s. With a tarot deck ordered like that, that represents the perfectly ordered universe the way it really is without us screwing up its interpretation. So when we shuffle a tarot deck, we're getting a snapshot of our current defective powers of perception. Does that make sense? Okay. The Queen of Swords. Intensely perceptive, keen observation, subtle, quick and confident. Often persevering, accurate in superficial things, graceful, fond of dancing and balancing. If ill-dignified, cruel, sly, deceitful, unreliable, though with a good exterior. The Prince of Swords, full of ideas and thoughts and designs, distrustful, suspicious, firm in friendship and enmity, careful, observant, slow, overcautious, symbolizes Alpha and Omega. He slays as fast as he creates. If ill-dignified, he's harsh, malicious, plotting, obstinate, yet hesitating and unreliable. The Princess of Swords. Now remember, the Princess of Swords is the throne of the Ace of Swords. Wisdom, strength, acuteness, subtlety in material things, grace and dexterity. If ill-dignified, she's frivolous and cunning. The Two of Swords. Quarrel made up, yet still some tension in relations. Actions sometimes selfish, sometimes unselfish. Contradictory characters in the same nature, strength through suffering, pleasure and pain. Sacrifice and trouble, yet strength arising therefrom, symbolized by the position of the rose, as though the pain itself has brought forth beauty. Arrangement, peace restored, truth, truce, and untruth. Sorrow and sympathy, aid to the weak, arrangement, justice, unselfishness, also a tendency to repetition of affronts on being pardoned. Wow. Also a tendency to repetition of affronts on being pardoned. Injury when meaning well, given to petitions. Also, want of tact and asking questions of little moment. Talkative. Three of Swords. Unhappiness, sorrow, and tears. Disruption, interruption, separation, quarreling, sowing of discord and strife, mischief making, sorrow and tears, yet mirth in platonic pleasures, singing, faithfulness in promises, honesty in money transactions, selfish and dissipated, yet sometimes generous, deceitful in words and repetitions, the whole according to dignity. And we could say that to all of these cards, the whole according to dignity. In other words, the cards surrounding them have a lot to do with our interpretation of whether this is a very positive or a negative interpretation of the meaning of the card. Four of Swords. Convalescence, recovery from sickness, a change for the better. Rest from sorrow, yet after and through it. Peace from and after war. Relaxation from anxiety. Quietness, rest, ease, and plenty, yet after struggle. Goods of this life, abundance, modified by dignity as usual. The Five of Swords. Defeat. Loss, malice, spite, slander, evil speaking. Contest finished and decided against the person. Failure, defeat, anxiety, trouble, poverty, avarice, grieving after gain, laborious, unresting, loss and vileness of nature, malicious, slanderous, lying, spiteful, and tale-bearing. A busybody and separator of friends, hating to see peace and love between others. Cruel yet cowardly, thankless and unreliable, clever and quick in thought and speech, feelings of pity easily aroused but unending. You might want to just remove that card from your deck. Six of Swords, labor, work, journey by water. Success after anxiety and trouble. Self-esteem, beauty, conceit, but sometimes modesty therewith. Dominance, patience, labor, etc. Can't say too much bad about a 6. Seven of Swords. Journey by land. In character, untrustworthy. Partial success. Yielding when victory is within grasp. As if the last reserves of strength were used up. Inclination to lose when on the point of gaining, through not continuing the effort. Love of abundance, fascinated by display, given to compliments, affronts, and insolences, and to spy upon others. Inclined to betray confidences, not always intentionally. Rather vacillatory and unreliable. The Eight of Swords. Narrow, restricted, petty, a prison. Too much force applied to too small things. Too much attention to detail at the expense of the principal and more important points. When ill-dignified, these qualities produce malice, pettiness, and domineering characteristics. Patience in the detail of study, great care in some things, counterbalanced by equal disorder in others. Impulsive, equally fond of giving or receiving money or presents, generous, clever, acute, selfish, and without strong feelings of affection. Admires wisdom, yet applies it to small and unworthy objects. Swords are a difficult suit because they're the mind, and all of our bummers, or at least a great percentage of the reality of our bummers, are the way we look at things, the way we think about things, the way we let thoughts dominate our lives. Nine of Swords. Illness, suffering, malice, cruelty, pain. Despair, cruelty, pitilessness. Malice, suffering, want, loss, misery. Burden, oppression, labor, subtlety and craft, dishonesty, lying, and slander. Jeez. Yet also obedience, faithfulness, patience, unselfishness, etc., according to dignity. Finally, the Ten of Swords. God, get us out of this suit. Ruin, death, defeat, disruption. Almost a worse symbol than the Nine of Swords. Undisciplined, warring force, complete disruption and failure, ruin of all planes and positions. Disdain, insolence, and impertinence, yet mirth and jollity therewith. Wait a minute. Disdain, insolence, and impertinence, yet mirth and jollity therewith. A marplot, loving to overthrow the happiness of others. A repeater of things, given to much unprofitable speech and many words, yet clever, eloquent, according to dignity. Okay, finally, and to wrap up understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot, the suit of discs. And remember our order: Ace, knight, queen, prince, princess, 2s through 10s. The Ace of Discs represents materiality in all sense, good and evil, and is therefore, in a sense, illusionary. It shows material gain, labor, power, wealth, etc. The Knight of Discs. Unless very well dignified, he is heavy, dull, and material, laborious, clever, and patient in material matters. If ill-dignified, he is avarice, grasping, dull, jealous, not very courageous unless assisted by other symbols. Discs being the material world, and the elemental beings associated with discs are gnomes. And if we think about the characters as created by J.R.R. Tolkien in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, his treatment of the dwarves, of the race of dwarves, with the exception of them actually being courageous. And Crowley says here the Knight of Discs is not very courageous. But all of the other qualities associated with the Knight of Discs fit pretty well the characteristic of a gnome or a dwarf. So when you think about a Knight of Discs in a tarot reading, you could sort of conjure up in your mind how the dwarves in the Lord of Rings might behave in any given situation. The Queen of Discs. She's excuse me. She's impetuous, kind, timid, rather charming, great-hearted, intellect, melancholy, truthful, yet of many moods. If ill-dignified, she is undecided, capricious, changeable, and foolish. The Prince of Discs. Increase of matter. Increases of good or evil. Solidifies. Practically applies things steady. Reliable. If ill-dignified, he is selfish, animal, and material, stupid. In either case, slow to anger, but furious if roused. Princess of Discs. She is generous, kind, diligent, benevolent, careful, courageous, persevering, pitiful. If ill-dignified, she is wasteful and prodigal. So we've done the aces and the court cards. Now next in order would be the 2s through 10s. So the 2 of Discs. Pleasant change, visit to friends. The harmony of change, alternation of gain and loss, weakness and strength, ever-changing occupation. Wandering, discontented with any fixed condition of things. Now elated, then melancholy. Industrious yet unreliable. Fortunate through prudence of management, yet sometimes unaccountably foolish. Alternatively talkative and suspicious. Kind yet wavering and inconsistent. Fortunate in journeying and argumentative. 3 of Discs. Business, paid employment, commercial transaction. Working in constructive force, building up, creation, erection, realization, and increase of material things. Gain in commercial transactions, rank, increase of substance, influence, cleverness in business, selfishness. Commencement of matters to be established later, narrow and prejudiced. Keen in matters of gain, sometimes given to seeking after impossibilities. 4 of discs, gain of money or influence, a present. Assured material gain, success, rank, dominion, earthly power. Completed, but leading to nothing beyond. Prejudicial, covetous, suspicious, careful and orderly, but discontented. Little enterprise or originality, according to dignity as usual. 5 of discs. Loss of perfection. Loss of money. Momentary anxiety. Loss of money or position. Trouble about material things. Labor, toil, land cultivation. Building, knowledge, and acuteness of earthly things. Poverty, carefulness, kindness. Sometimes money gained after severe toil and labor. Unimaginative, harsh, stern, determined, obstinate. Now, all of these seemingly contradictory qualities to each of these cards really drives home the importance of the interpretation of the cards vis-a-vis the issue being involved in a tarot reading. So a tarot reading seldom gives easy answers to difficult questions, and usually all questions to the tarot are pretty difficult. You really have to form a relationship with the cards and know both sides of how each card may be commenting on the issue at hand. So the best thing a tarot reader can do is to continually practice. Trial and error will always work best. Perhaps not for your client, but for you. You get a feel for how the cards answer things. And if a card in one of your own tarot readings, if it gives you an answer that you completely don't understand, and you don't understand it until maybe weeks or months or years later, then you'll know when you finally do figure out what it was trying to tell you. Then you have a precedent, a personal experience of how this particular card can work. Does that make sense? No matter what the book says, if the 7 of Swords tells you something in a reading that turns out to give you a definite message, then when you read for others, you have your own hands-on experience of what that card means. All divination, indeed all magic, is a work in progress, and you are the only thing that is being worked on. 6 of discs. Success in material things. Prosperity in business. Success and gain in material undertakings. Power, influence, rank, nobility. Rule over people. Fortunate, successful, liberal, and just. If ill-dignified, may be purse-proud, insolent from excess or prodigal. 7 of discs. Unprofitable speculations and employments. Little gain for much labor. Promises of success unfulfilled. Shewn, as it were, by the fact that the rosebuds do not come to anything. Loss of apparent promising fortune. Hopes deceived and crushed. Disappointment, misery, slavery, necessity, and baseness. A cultivator of land, yet a loser thereby. Sometimes it denotes slight and isolated gains with no fruits resulting therefrom, and from no further account through seeming to promise well. The 8 of discs. Skill, prudence, cunning. Over-careful in small things at the expense of the great. Penny wise and pound foolish. Gain of ready money in small sums, mean, avarice, industrious, cultivation of land, hoarding, lacking in enterprise. The 9 of discs. Inheritance, much increase of goods. Complete realization of material gain. Goods, riches, inheritance, covetous treasuring of goods, and sometimes thief or knavery. The whole thing according to dignity. And finally, the 10 of discs. Remember about how the climax of the descent of matter is the signal for the redintegration by spirit. 10 of discs and the Princess of Discs are the most magical cards of all the tarot, because it's from the 10 of discs that the entire tarot sequence must begin again. 10 of discs, riches and wealth. Completion of material gain and fortune, but nothing beyond, as it were at the very pinnacle of success. In a tarot reading, it could be old age, slothfulness, great wealth, yet sometimes loss in part, heaviness, dullness of mind, yet clever and prosperous in money transactions. And with that, we end chapter 20. Chapter 21, as I mentioned, is just a glossary of thelemic terms. Starting with the AA and going all the way to, let's see, what is Z? Zion. From AA to Zion. But for that, I hope you have your own copy of Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot and refer to it often. Again, I guess we went really long today, but we're finishing up. Again, tomorrow we start Book of Ordinary Oracles. And it'll sort of be like a stocking stuffer treat for this holiday season. So let's get on with our week. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.